Hello, my name is Melissa Treinkman. I'm thrilled to be here today to chat with Nadina Hassan. You can read more about her in volume 80 of the Vocal Point column in the Journal of Singing. Hi, Nadina. It's so great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor.
You recently finished up the national tour of Mean Girls as Regina George. Can you tell me what that experience was like for you?
It was an incredible experience. I graduated right in the pandemic, so I moved home in 2020, which was a great experience. But I did then, we had to adapt to learning how to audition from home. So that was a whole new beast and it was quite fun. But I did end up booking this right out of my bedroom. I had one in-person call back here in New York. And then I went straight into rehearsals about a month later. My university prepared me so well for working as a professional, but nothing can really prepare you for the 8-show-week schedule and sort of what you have to do to maintain your voice, to maintain your energy, to maintain all these things for such a long run. And I was signing on for a year and then signed on for the last 6 months that we were doing. But so I knew I was on the contract for a long time. So yeah, it was definitely the most rewarding thing I have ever done in my career and in my life at this point. And it was also one of the most challenging things I've ever done.
Can you tell me a little bit about your background and what it felt like to be the first person of color to play Regina George? Is that correct?
Yes, so there had been a couple understudies, women of color, who had done it before. I was very excited. She is such an emblem of pop culture and such an icon. Everyone knows her. When the musical came out, I was in college when they opened on Broadway, and I had never even imagined myself in this role. I always you sort of see yourself in the roles where people who are similar to you play. And the woman of color that was on the stage was Ashley Park, who actually is from Ann Arbor as well. And she was amazing. So I always thought, oh, I'll learn the Gretchen material. That's maybe what they want for that role, as a woman of color for that role. So I never even imagined that they would want this role for as a woman of color. And so it's not to say like women of color don't lead shows. I've led many shows in my life, but this one specifically, she's such an emblem of power and she's such an icon. She really is just such an icon. And to sort of break down those barriers of standards of beauty, and specifically in theater too. And my co-stars, my other two plastics with me, were also women of color. So every night we would say there was a moment when we'd walk straight down stage, center stage, and we had this big slow-mo power walk, and we always felt so powerful in that moment, and it was always so exciting for us to be these three women of color marching down the stage and being so emblematic of something that people know. It was really cool.
I remember I came to see you in the national tour, and I remember walking into the Pantages Theater and seeing the big poster of the three plastics. And we all have, in our mind, whoever it was, Rachel McAdams, the people from the movie, these blonde women. And to see you three up there was so inspiring. I think I got chills in that moment.
Yeah, after shows, we get messages from people, and getting messages from young theater performers of color, and they would message us and say how much it meant to them to see us up there and how inspiring it was. That sort of thing is never taken lightly. It feels very nice, and we are so proud to have done that for a year and a half.
Can you talk a little bit about what life on tour is like?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a whirlwind. That's another one of those things that school can't really prepare you for. For us, we were for the first year of tour, we were moving pretty regularly, about every Monday, which was also our day off. So that was sort of an adjustment to have to figure out how do we rest on this day while also traveling. It's very fun. I was so excited to get to go to all these places that maybe I've always wanted to go. For me, I would say the biggest advice I'd say for people going on tour is be really adaptable and be able to just sort of adapt to anything. You have pretty much no control over the circumstances of each city. There's a whole new team of people. Maybe the climate is different in the place that you have arrived in. We played places where we'd be from sea level, and then the next week we'd be in Denver, a mile up in the sky, and we'd have to adjust to the altitude.
Do you have any advice for students finishing up, say, a musical theater degree, about to enter the real world? What's the difference between being a professional and being a full-time musical theater student?
When you're in college, you have so many opportunities sort of set for you, right? Ready. Here are the shows that we're doing, or here's your class schedule. Here's a play that we're doing, maybe. So there are all these opportunities that are sort of set in front of you. Once you get out of college, you have to really still continue to be hungry and then seek out things, because it's not set in front of you like it was in school anymore. I think there are a million things you can do. So kind of knowing and learning and being hungry to find out what you want to do, what you don't want to do. I think that's really important, because then you can really clarify what you are good at and what makes your soul happy as a performer. I think that's pretty key. So yeah, that would be my advice. Continue to be hungry.
Do you have any advice on how to handle pre-performance energy, or what we might call performance anxiety? And does that affect you at all?
The pre-performance stuff definitely can be helped by, for me, I do a lot of yoga. Meditation before the shows is always really good for me to just sort of calm my nervous system, things like that. For Mean Girls, I had a cup of tea before Act One, and I had a cup of tea before Act Two. So different things that sort of ground you in what you're doing presently. And, knowing that you know this better than anyone else. That you've prepared this is what you're good at, this is what you're doing.
Did you ever consider another career, or did you always want to be a singer?
Never considered another career. I've always wanted to be in the entertainment industry, always. Even when I was a kid, I loved the celebrity gossip magazines. I loved all those things. I always loved watching SNL, and I was such a Broadway fan. So all of the things, I always knew I wanted to be in entertainment.
Can you share any of the qualities that some of your best voice teachers have possessed?
I've had some really incredible voice teachers in my training and my college and my professional career as well. I think what's my favorite thing about the voice teachers that I've really loved is when they are teaching, when I can tell that they're teaching to my voice specifically, that they're not teaching for me to sound like the cast recording, or for me to sound like someone they knew that had sung the song before, or something else. But when they're specifically teaching to my voice and how my tone and my capabilities and all these things, then I know that each criticism they give me is very, very specific and thought through.
Many singers wonder if they are good enough to have a performance career. Did you ever experience this in your training? And do you have any advice for these singers?
Everyone is going to be their worst critic. That is never going to go away. That's for every single performer, all these celebrities, A-list, everyone has that. Everyone is going to be their worst critic, and that won't go away. My advice is, if you really want to do it, because you can sort of find your ways to, mentally sort of talk to yourself a little more kindly, and sort of get yourself through that. So I would say not to pay attention too much to that little critic in your head, because everyone's got it, and it's not necessarily true, because of course, if everyone has it, then no one else sees it like that. No one else sees you like that. So really just go for it, and put your all into it and do what you want.
What are your hopes and dreams for the future?
I have so many. I would love to make my Broadway debut at some point. I'd love to originate a role in theater. I can't wait to get on film and TV, on screen. I love that side of the entertainment industry as well. I have such a love for comedy, so I can't wait to do some sort of comedic show.
Can you talk a little bit about, the quintessential triple threat in musical theater, and how you relate to those three mediums of singing, acting, and dance? Do you feel equal in all of them?
Personally, I'm definitely not equal in all three. I would say my dance capabilities are far lower than my acting and singing capabilities. But that's okay. I mean, of course, if you are, training and you're young, continue to sort of foster all three of them, and never sell yourself short because you feel like you are not all these three things. there are very few who actually are perfect at all three. Of course, some people are going to have varying levels of these things.
I think some people get fixated on what they don't have rather than what they can do.
Yeah, I think people get sometimes a little hung up on maybe even just cast recordings or type specifically. People use the word type a lot. That's I think that word is so silly, especially these days. You never know what the team is looking for, and maybe I mean I feel like I'm a pretty good example of that, even in the role of Regina. I never thought I would be what they were looking for. Don't ever sell yourself short because you think you know what someone else is thinking.
Yeah, you really are the poster child for that, aren't you? Of you never know what's going to come your way, and that's exciting because you were the perfect Regina George. You were so great. Your singing was amazing. You were just perfect in that character.
Thank you. That's really kind of you to say. I had so much fun doing it.
Yeah, I could tell you were having fun up on stage. What's your warm-up routine on the day of the performance? Do you have, certain rituals or things that you have to do before you perform?
Yeah, I do have a pretty regimented schedule throughout the day. There were things that I couldn't eat, definitely had to eat, like the varying things that I knew. I just know my body to a T. Once you perform enough, you know what makes your feel good and not feel good. I always tried to get a short workout, even if it was just 10 minutes of yoga. If that's all I had time for that day, that's all I would do. My vocal warm-ups before the show, I would try to do 2 hours, an hour and a half before, and then continue sort of vocalizing throughout the rest of that time, whether it was just talking to coworkers or doing a couple more right before the show. For vocal warm-ups, I would listen back to voice lessons with my coach and just do the warm-ups, varying warm-ups that we did in our lesson.
Can you talk a little bit about the New York audition circuit and what that is like?
I love auditioning, so maybe I'm a little I have maybe a different opinion than some people, but I find them very fun, especially in New York. You end up running into people inevitably, so it's a positive time.
That's really great to have that attitude toward auditions because I know that's not how a lot of people think about auditions. Like, I love auditioning. So that's probably one of the keys to your success.
Yeah, a lot of people find them quite nerve-wracking, which they absolutely can be. I'm such an extrovert. So I think for me, I think the most exciting part is going in and seeing people or meeting people if I've never met the team before. And then just sort of having a good time. I think one of the keys too is walking in there and trusting yourself a little more than you might ordinarily. Being so prepared that you can just trust yourself and not really think in the audition. Because you will inevitably be nervous, but in that case, you have to just be relaxed in knowing that you did work. You did the work, you can trust yourself, and it will kind of fall into place from there.
Any advice you have for getting a really great self-tape?
Once you do too many takes, you will inevitably get in your head, and then your eye is not as objective looking at the work you're doing. So trying to do fewer takes and saying, hey, I'm going to do 3 and that's it. And then we'll see, and I'll look at them in 15 minutes because I'm too close to it right now. Because it for musical theater specifically, I sort of look at it as I'm going to do just a few because if I was in an audition, I would only get the one. I'm not going to give myself the opportunity to reach perfection because in the room it wouldn't have been perfect either. It's an audition. It's never going to be exactly how you see it in your head. So trusting that you can do it in 3, do it in 4, whatever you need, kind of remove your head from it a little bit, come back to it. I'd say for musical theater, that's pretty key.
Well, thank you so much, Nadina, for being here today and sharing your experience so openly. I know you are going to be an inspiration to so many who see this and read this.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It was so nice to meet you.